It's been 6 months since the iPhone 14 Pro was unveiled, and finally, here it is. I've used it for quite some time, and I'm not sure I like it. iPhone 14 Pro may just be the most ridiculous iPhone I've ever used, for one very simple reason. When I first got my hands on this thing, I was super excited. The dynamic island, the new camera system and other cool things. But with the flow of time, my opinion started to change. I've started seeing things that should have been done differently. The first such thing is the display. The display on the iPhone 14 Pro gives me a very strange feeling every time I look at it. At the first glance, it is a fantastic display. 6.1-inch OLED with ProMotion, perfect colors, contrast, and the brightness peaks at absurd 2000 nits. It is perfect for video consumption, social media, browsing the web, reading and all that stuff. But it's just so over the top, really. This display gives you more than you need, much more. ProMotion, super high brightness, always on, dynamic island. It feels great to have so many features, but it sometimes feels so overwhelming to use them. The ProMotion works flawlessly. All the animations are super smooth, but you almost feel how iOS slows down this display. You feel how slow animations tailored for 60Hz displays hold the 14 Pro down. It can launch apps faster and show fast animations, but Apple won't allow it. The brightness is also insanely high, and who cares that the phone gets hot rather quickly and dims the panel? At least it has those 2000 nits, right? And don't even get me started on the always-on display. This is the second most controversial thing about the display for me. On one hand, I love the idea of it and the fact that it exists. But on the other hand, it is executed in such a classic Apple way that you constantly feel fooled that the screen is on. It's just so bright, especially if you didn't turn off the wallpaper. You constantly think that it is turned on. I personally am so used to displays that turn off that at first I was subconsciously reaching to turn the display off to realize it is off already. Very strange feeling. But don't worry, I'm just being dramatic. After some time, you get used to it and start getting a bizarre feeling of being on the very edge of iPhone display technologies. Yet, if we are really talking about the edge, the dynamic island is that edge. It's the most controversial, yet the most interesting feature to use. This little peel cutout feels so fresh and innovative, yet so half-baked and dumb. Let me explain. The overall look of the device with the dynamic island is very nice. You really feel like you have the latest and greatest. But when you actually start using it, you start noticing little things and issues that make you ask, why? 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 For example, why are some native iOS apps not supported? Like stopwatch, for example. Couldn't have they figured it out somehow? Second, why are apps mysteriously disappearing when more than 2 apps are using the dynamic island? Or why is there only a handful of supported apps half a year later? You see what I mean? The feature itself is very interesting and weirdly natural to use. And if you're not looking for problems, you won't find any. But if you pay a little more attention to what it does and how it acts, you will start seeing those issues every single time. But hey, this is the first generation of the dynamic island, and I'm sure Apple will make a few tweaks in the 15 Pro, right? Another thing I've noticed about the iPhone 14 Pro is how intensively uncomfortable it is sometimes. The phone itself looks like a jewel and feels accordingly, but sometimes you just notice all those little things that drive you mad. It's super heavy. I am used to slightly lighter phones, and 14 Pro really did put a strain on my fingers. It's not that bad, but if you switch to the 14 Pro from, let's say, the iPhone 13, you'll instantly feel the weight difference. I know this is due to stainless steel being used instead of aluminum, but I seriously can't wait for the titanium 15 Pro, which should be much lighter. Oh, and if we are talking about insane things, the camera area is insanely big. It's like half of the phone's width. This camera just screams, "Start shooting!" 3 cameras on the back and 1 on the front, all producing great photos. But let's look at each camera closer, starting with the main camera. It's a 48 megapixel sensor, which is phenomenal for iPhones. It's phenomenal, but only if you're shooting RAW. You get a lot of headroom for edits, thanks to the sensor itself. Photos are detailed, with all the textures preserved, accurate lighting and so on. I only wish this 48 megapixel RAWs weighted less. But if you don't use RAW format, the camera is just okay. It's not that far from the iPhone 13 in terms of colors, sharpness and details. Photonic engine knows its job well. Oh, and I especially like the 2x zoom. It may not be that much different from the 3x, but it gives much more creative freedom while still getting some decent shots. As for the ultra-wide camera, it's okay too. It performs slightly better than on older iPhones, but the difference isn't that dramatic. New algorithms and a slightly better sensor do produce slightly sharper and more detailed images, especially in low light. Yet, I still wouldn't recommend using the ultrawide in the dark. Okay, what about the 3x zoom lens? It's great, without a doubt. For me, having a 3x zoom is absolutely fantastic, and I did manage to get some decent shots. Maybe I don't use this lens daily, but it still gives more creative freedom. Selfie camera? Yeah, it's there. It shoots great in well-lit environments and slightly worse in the dark. Let's not dwell on something that trivial, because all those photography innovations pale in comparison to videos. The iPhone 14 Pro has amazed me for two reasons: Action mode and 4K cinematic mode. Action mode is something completely different to anything we had before. Yes, it only shoots in 2.8K, but the image it produces, whew, just look how smooth it is. Here's how it looks without stabilization. See the difference? Night and day. It's absolutely incredible, and each time I think about skiing or biking, I think action mode. And that 4K cinematic, woof, that's what I need. My iPhone 13 shoots only 1080p, 30 fps, and the videos already look fantastic. But the iPhone 14 Pro quadruples that. Truly amazing to see such good shots coming from a phone. Almost cinema level stuff. Performance is yet another totally ridiculous thing. It's blazingly fast. The A16 is so fast that you almost never see loading screens. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating a bit, but you get the point. Playing games on it, it's a pure bliss, and all apps open instantly. It's almost as powerful as the M1 chip, yet much more power efficient, which is once again over the top. What I really hate about the phone is the storage. Why the hell does it come with 128 gigs of storage as standard? It should have at least 256. 128 is like a spit in the face. You have a Pro phone, but you can't fully spread your wings because the storage will run out in a couple of days. Luckily, the iPhone 14 Pro redeems itself in the battery department. I was expecting this phone to perform identically or worse than the iPhone 13, but it totally shocked me. I managed to get 2 full days out of this phone when I'm not shooting videos. When I'm out there doing creative work, it dies within a day, but that still is at least an hour longer than the 14. Even with all features turned on, it still manages to outlive the 13, which is a very solid phone in terms of battery life. I think you've guessed why I called this phone ridiculous. It's so over the top in every category. The display, the design, the cameras, the performance, the battery. Everything exceeds your needs. And that's what lies in the core of my disliking. It just doesn't let go. It constantly screams in your face, I'm the new thing, let's do something creative. It's not a cheap phone. And when it just lays on the table, you occasionally glance at it and think, did I just waste my money? So to justify the purchase, you go out and start taking photos, shooting videos and doing everything you can just so it won't lay unused. And that is kinda annoying for me. Yet, it's a pleasant annoyance. I enjoy every second of using this phone, despite it being so ridiculously over the top.